and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Vicki. Minutes. The minutes were circulated prior to the meeting.
We approve the minutes.
I would second for purposes of permitting discussion. Do we have any changes, addition, corrections, questions? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No one opposed. Minutes are approved. Re-precincting. Julie, tell us what we're going to be considering regarding that agenda item.
Okay, so as of January 1st of 22, Census Bureau precinct boundaries will become legal boundaries. Precincts are established by the Tippecanoe Board of Elections and Registration. There's a strict timeline. The county will have to alter voter assignments to new election districts and precincts by January 5th, which is the first date for candidate filing. Staff have worked to make precinct names consistent between census data and state databases. Discrepancies between Census Bureau and state boundary maps have also been fixed. They fixed minor discrepancies, or what they called slivers. The board must send proposed precincts to the Indiana Election Division by October 15th, which is Friday, by noon, for a technical review. So it's basically so the Board of Elections and Registration has an order. Then we complete what's called an Indiana Election Commission. It's an IEC 8 describing the precinct changes. They've used GIS files, shape files are laid over the census Tiger files. And the standards for the precincts it has a minimum of 600 active voters. And that's different from when we talk about districts, because districts, it's about population. So precincts, it's about active voters. So 600 is the minimum, and then the maximum is 2,000 active voters. There are ones that are smaller than 600 that are grandfathered in, that were before July 1st of 2019. These precinct boundaries may not cross congressional, state legislative, township, county, or state boundaries. And once the IED approves this, a legal notice will be published in the newspaper, in which then the public has the option to contact us within 10 days of that. So that's the process.
All right, and so you're indicating that this is a result of the new census data that we're required to consider redistricting as far as our precincts.
Yeah, well, we're just...
I said redistricting. It's re-precincting.
Right, we're just doing re-precincting. So going further, if a county voter files an objection within those 10 days, after the legal notice from IED, approval is published by the county. Indiana Election Commission will determine whether to approve the precincts. So IEC, that's Indiana Election Commission, may approve the precinct changes if there is not sufficient time for 10-day objection period. So there's a kind of like open door there.
So is this the start of the process just
Yes.
to get this approved for the determination or redetermination of our county precincts?
Correct.
All right.
I'm going to ask you a couple questions.
Hit your button.
And then I'm on forever, or?
Well,
Yes,
when you want to be off, you can just shut it off.
And how, oh, there's a red light.
Yeah, so come closer. So you're being recorded.
Okay, so first off, do we still have the same number of precincts as we had the last time?
No, we've eliminated about 15. Some of the precincts that we eliminated were non-voting precincts, which the state urged us to get rid of because of confusion. And then for purposes of just where the population shifts were, and to make equal precincts, so we did eliminate a few. It also ripples down. You want the few. It is not all about saving money, but it does impact when we have that number of ballot styles, how much we are paying our vendors to create the different ballots, both on the machine, in paper, and for the handicapped accessible ballot. So it's a ripple effect. So we were able to reduce them and still be within well within legal limits. And we have to remember we're a vote center county, so The precinct size can be stretched a little bit, towards the higher limits, as opposed to someplace like Lake County, who still votes by precinct. And so the smaller precincts are perhaps a little easier to manage for them. But I do have a brief presentation if the board would allow. Or
Well,
is there
let
anything
him
for that?
finish some of his
Actually,
questions.
that might be a good idea, and then that might answer some of my questions.
I hope so, sir.
And I want to add that, keep in mind that Tippecanoe County did have precincts where it had 0 voters or just a
Three.
couple voters, and so,
Well, I guess one of the things, I haven't sensed any of this, but, and I know it's different, but we have issues of gerrymandering, and I don't think that in any way.
On a precinct level, that's,
there isn't any.
Yeah.
it's really, it's just too difficult.
Yeah, well, but
Because I'm building from the census tracts, and by also, another factor of the state, and statute is I can't break census blocks or things like that. At no point in time, were we looking at voter registration history or anything like that.
and there's nothing here, it's not like Councilman Smith is in
We don't
District
care
1,
about
and
that.
now we've changed his precinct, so he's in District 2, none of that.
No, we don't, in fact, we don't look at things like that. The state mandates that when the council, both the county council and the common councils of the various cities, or there is a clause called the Incumbent Protection Clause. Incumbents have to be protected if possible. And so that's not our responsibility. When the councils and the commissioner districts get drawn, they get drawn by, the county ones get drawn by the commissioners, the city ones obviously by their own city councils. I've already talked to Cindy Murray about, she's already engaged me in helping construct those. But, there is incumbent protection if at all practical, and you have to have a good reason for it to ever happen. You cannot put an incumbent together with another one. But if someone signaled they were retiring, or something like that, it wouldn't matter, but.
And using my terms, but what we are doing here is apolitical, it is mechanical, we are not doing.
It's for the administration of elections,
Yeah.
and trust me, the people in the office, we just wanted to make it as easy on us as possible with the fewest number of permutations of the ballot style, and just to make it the most efficient possible. They're just like Legos. We tried to make them equal in both population and active voters, and the overriding consideration in precinct, again, is active voters. But we did put an eye to trying to make them equal in population to make it easier on the other entities that are going to use this data.
And was there anything, what I'm going to call political pressure from either the R or the Ds, coming from, on high, so to speak, down to our level saying, hey, when you do this, these are some of the standards we want.
Absolutely not. No one like that has tried to influence us or talk to us. And, there are both people of both parties that express interest. A couple people asked questions when we were at the demo at the fairgrounds. But I don't think this county's like that anyway.
It's not, but I
Yeah.
just thought it was better to say.
I had a brief I've had brief conversations with a couple people, like Heather Maddox, just for perspective, because she's been through it, but, and then Cindy Murray, just because a couple people have inquired about how far along we were so they can do some planning, and if we were willing to help them later on down the line. But those are the only kinds of conversations we've had.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned something about a presentation?
Yes, sir.
If you
Just,
would.
briefly, yeah. This is the statute that governs this. There's an entire chapter in Indiana Code that governs how we precinct. In 2010, we had 172,780 folks living here. In 2020, the Census Bureau counted 186,000. I will tell you, based on almost 40 years now working around the office, I am shocked that we didn't break 200,000.
Yep.
So many other people are too.
We're very shocked.
I had a brief conversation with Mayor Rosworski. I think it's public knowledge. Some of the powers that be in other places, like the city, they're thinking about appealing these numbers, which would also require us to go backwards because we think we're undercounted, but we use the numbers we got. So that's where we're at.
COVID may have played a big part in
Yeah.
what's happened here.
Total voter registration, 119,000 as of the last election. It's slightly above that at the exact moment, but there was about a 14,000 gain. So our township populations, for the very first time ever, Wabash Township has the most folks in it. It's according to the census. Now, we knew that trend was coming, and we discussed that by estimation, it had passed Fairfield Township about 5 years ago, and I remember we brought it up at a meeting a couple years ago, but for the very first decennial census, Wabash Township has more people counted in it. There are the 13 townships with their population. You can go down to the bottom there in Jackson, which is the southwest corner of our county. 490 folks live out there, good people tilling the soil. So things like that are going to be an exception to the rule because we cannot break township boundaries. Randolph would be an exception to the rule, So they have to stand alone, but I just wanted to show the township populations and the registered voters by township. Fairfield still has more registered voters than Wabash. You can draw your own conclusions from that, but there you go. And all the way down to the bottom, we can't break up some of those because they're just right on target anyway. So, and then there is an exception in statute written for our county and Monroe County and Delaware County that because the student turnout tends to be different, we do not have to follow the 2,000 active voter limit in townships where it is predominantly student registration. Corporation populations, these are the corporations that are recognized by the state and the census, and you can just briefly see that we go from all the way from Stockwell to Lafayette. We have 2 second-class cities now. This for the first time after a census. West Lafayette bumped up a class. Those are our 13 townships. Now let me get into what everybody's really into. Randolph Township, no change, remains 1 precinct. It is a precinct unto itself. Jackson Township, no change, 1 precinct. All 333 voters are just all there in Jackson Township. Wayne Township, no change, 1 precinct. There's only around 1,200 registered voters in Wayne. Union Township, no change, 1 precinct. They are also, for our benefit, the Town Council of Shadeland has abolished their wards and went to an all-large council, which makes other easy administration. So I'm very, very helpful. I'm very thankful for all their help and their consideration of what was going on. Washington Township, unchanged. We're going to leave the same 2 precincts alone in Washington Township. Not enough growth to justify digging into it this census. Same with Laramie Township. Same 2 precincts there, split there at Highway 28, and you have Clarks Hill and Stockwell out there in separate precincts, and that's, so there's no change in Laramie. Shelby Township, there's no change, 2 precincts. That green under the river there is part of Wayne there, so ignore that. But the 2 townships out in Shelby, we're not going to change either. We share the jurisdiction with Audubon, with the Benton County Clerk. That's a split town, so that always makes fun out there. But so that will be a split, but we can't avoid that. There's Fairfield Township, and these maps will be put up online by the end of the week, so folks can look at them. At present, there are 37 precincts in Fairfield. You have a map in your hand.
This one right here.
We've slimmed down to 27. Part of that being the case of 1 precinct in its entirety was a non-voting precinct with 0 people living in it. And you'll see things like 18 and 14, precincts 18 and 14 look rather large geographically, but that's covering things like the Meyer parking lot, Arconic, so they have to go someplace. So even though they're not residential, the land has to be assigned someplace. The large area north of the Wildcat Creek there, you see 1, and you have 1, 2, and 3. Those are the 3 precincts outside of Fairfield, outside of the Lafayette city limits that are Fairfield precincts. So 1, 2, and 3 are outside of Lafayette. The remaining precincts are in Lafayette. And the one thing we did consider, we tried to observe what we call neighborhoods. Like I tried to keep the Hannah neighborhood together, or the Lincoln, or the Centennial, or we tried to, those things, St. Mary's. We gave great credence to, keeping neighborhoods in the same precinct when we crossed, McAllister, St. Lawrence. Those are some things that we considered, aside from statutory considerations. Those are the kind of things we did. We knew, I know where the neighborhoods are, and I felt like I should try to keep them common, try to keep them equal. The average 2,000 in population, although that's not the driver of a precinct, but they do all run between 1,883 and 2,100 in population, so it should be easy for other entities to use these precincts. And no one has more than 1,100 active voters. That data I will have circulated to you by the end of the week. I'll give you an exact count of both population and active voters in every single precinct by the end of the week. It was a little hard to extract into this presentation, though. Weah Township is 17 precincts. That's down from 20. Again, 2,000 average population, about 1,100 folks in every precinct assigned. I will call your attention to precinct 11 being such a strange shape. And that is not because of my gerrymandering, that is because of our state legislature in its infinite wisdom used the old precinct lines when they wrote the definition of House District 27, and it was a collision course between House District 27 and the city of Lafayette recent annexation that happened in these intervening 10 years between census. That 11 looks strange, because I cannot break a House district line, but I was trying to make it easy for our administration and keep city in the same precincts and not have a split. I didn't want a split precinct. That's basically what I'm trying to say.
Mike,
So
we had a problem with split precincts in the
it
past.
confuses our voters and it confuses our programmers. Our workers get confused and they'll assign folks. They'll just,
Well, even neighbors, it confuses neighbors. They want to know why they can't vote for so-and-so and.
so it's
anyway.
clear just to have if you're in precinct 11, you're in the city limits. If you're in 15, you're in that.
What I hear you saying is you had no choice.
No,
Is that correct?
that's why it looks. That's why 11 looks so weird, and ugly. And I wish they had used census tract definitions rather than the old precinct lines, but it is what it is.
And they say that they've got to be a continuing,
Yeah, there's a
effect.
sliver.
So
By the way, the city annexed the land this way, so it's not.
they count the
me.
road as
The
that.
road is the connecting point, and because that's just the way the city annexed it and defined it, and so the city did not make it pretty, so or it's not aesthetic, so that's why that line is like that. That's nothing we can. There's nothing we can do. If you don't like it, we can. I will change it and assign it to. We can combine the precincts, but they would create you a split.
It was just
Why-
a question.
So,
Okay.
you know what, Mike, I would say that, look, they do allow exceptions,
Yes, ma'am.
and we could make that an exception and have a number of its own.
Yeah, that's why I was going, because it does have less population than the others, but that's just the residue of the city, and it can't connect to anything else, any of these other precincts, because of the House district line. So I couldn't append it to a neighboring precinct, but so it's one of our very, very few exceptions. So that's the first exception outside of Jackson Township that we've encountered right now, because Jackson doesn't actually meet the threshold, but I can't make people move there.
No, but I would suggest that we do make it its own number.
Yes, ma'am. We'll keep it that way. We'll
If-
keep it
well,
its own
what-
number.
What is,
No,
what do you
no,
guys?
it seems like a reasonable explanation.
Okay. Perry Township has 5 precincts. Precinct 1 is out of norm. That's the bottom, the left-hand corner there, the southwest corner. That part of Perry Township is annexed into the city of Lafayette now. There's only 783 people that live in that, and only 335 active voters. And so it actually does not meet our standards, but it is an exception because it is the only part of Perry Township that is in the city of Lafayette. The rest are in range, like I say, as far as roughly 2,000 in population and 1,100 in active voters. But one is smaller, and the third exception that I'll bring to your attention, because of the way the city annexed. And for ease of administration, we have run that for the last 10 years as a split, and we'd like to get out of that, because that's another one of those, you get questions is, well, why can't I vote for Bob Downing, my neighbor? Well, this makes it very
Yeah,
clear. So, the other thing that does confuse folks that we do frequently encounter is people will get a lot of times, especially in the northeast side of Fairfield Township and then the southern boundary, and folks get sewer, fire protection, water from the city, but they don't get a vote. They think they can vote for the mayor, but they're not in the city. We're just providing them services. So it does confuse some folks. So that's Perry Township. The wobbling line is the Wildcat Creek, which is a natural boundary. So and that's the way the census tract followed the Wildcat Creek out there. So these townships are pending. Wabash, Tippecanoe, and Sheffield. We'll have maps up by the end of the week. The state's portal experienced difficulty yesterday, so I couldn't get the maps back up. They're done, but I couldn't download the Tiger files. They had their phone system and everything, the phone tree and everything was down at the state office building yesterday morning because of the storms. But this is where we are. Things are done. Sheffield will remain 4 townships, basically Dayton a township, a precinct unto itself, and then the rest of the township split 3 ways. Tippecanoe, we're actually going to, Battleground will remain its own precinct, and then the rest will be split, but it's redrawn somewhat because the population shift is approaching 10,000 folks now, that township. And then Wabash is the big one that's outstanding right now. And I anticipate it having about the same size, being the same number of precincts as Fairfield. And it should be circulated to you by the end of the week. But certainly by noon on Friday, I have to get this stuff to the state. So it's just a matter of having them relaunch that portal and let me extract the file back. I've got most of this on Arcus, which is the assessor stuff, the assessor run programs here, but it's a little tedious and I'm a little unfamiliar with it. I'm navigating it pretty well, but if I have to, I'll do that. I'll use that.
Well, it looks like these issues have been well considered, but Mike, if you would, just refresh my recollection of who all has the input on this. I understand that there was a lot of work with area plan, and I take it they're the ones that actually sort out the population, or is that
actually, they don't sort the population. The population is by census tract, and we were assigned a specialist from the IED to go through the process with us. Ours was Stephanie Davidson, and this is the first time she and I worked together. She's been very on the spot and answering questions, so the state actually provided the census tract data driven by the Census Bureau, and provided a portal to use to make these things happen. The portal was originally designed for citizens, any ordinary citizen, to submit proposals for congressional or legislative districts, and other counties saw that it wasn't meeting their needs, and so several counties began using it for their own purposes. So I talked to Tim Wesco last night, the chairman of the House committee, about, my portal turned back on, but he didn't realize how it had come to be used, and he was somewhat pleased by that. So, and then James Werner, the assessor's office, has been very helpful with Arcus files and making sure I had all the shape files right.
All right, thank you, Mike. What questions is the board?
But I can give a little bit more background on, because I know more people are interested in the redistricting. So let me just give a little bit of a review on that. So it was House Bill 1581 that the House Election Committee final passage of House Representative district lines was on September 23rd. State Senate district lines, final passage was on October 1st, and the final version of the bill was presented and signed by the governor on October 4th. This is to give you a little bit of background of the little bit of time we were left.
But wait a minute, that's not us, right?
Well, we don't do that, but we had to wait for the district lines to really
Right,
come up
right.
with the precinct lines. So Mike in Germany have worked on that. Mike, that was a great presentation, actually, so thank you.
Thank you.
But they didn't have a lot of time to work on that. I'm not even sure, it also should be signed by the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, and the Lieutenant Governor. Have they signed, Mike?
I think it's one of those things, it's like a pocket thing. If they don't object to the governor sign it, just de facto.
Okay,
becomes.
okay.
Yeah.
So probably by October 9th was literally when everything was set on these lines. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so county council and commissioner redistricting, though, are established by county commissioner ordinance, and it has to be by unanimous consent, and must have nearly equal population for county council and be compact for both. Let's see. Well, and that's going to be the next step. That's not due until December 31st, but hopefully that'll be done way in advance.
Right, but that's not on our table.
No, but we will be helping out, definitely.
We'll make sure they have the help they want.
Yes.
Well, it looks like we have enough work on our table without trying to
I'm not
anticipate
listening, no.
what happens down in Indianapolis. But all right. Any questions? Any questions?
No, but I will, so this is for, the public might want to know this, that previously adopted ordinance establishing districts remain in effect for the purpose of filing a vacancy in an office until the expiration of the term of that office. So that remains. I want everybody to understand that.
Like all the Republican committeemen, and their posts that they hold now.
The precinct committeemen, yeah.
So I don't have to worry about being booted into a
No,
different
no.
district here or precinct here?
So they'll be held over until the next presidential and the next cycle of 2022. All the Democrat committeemen are after 2022, but the folks that are currently Democrat committeemen continue their posts until the interview election in 2022.
Any questions? Questions, comments? We've had a motion and a second. We've had some questions and some discussions. I guess I call the question and would propose no, I don't call the question. All in favor of accepting the precinct maps as suggested, proposed, and as currently developed, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you. All right. Keep the process moving. Next item.
Yeah.
Resolution to establish a bank account. Why do we need to establish a bank account, Julie?
Well, we do collect copy fees and any kind of fee that we charge for getting computer data from SVRS, and also for fines that the state allows us to collect for late filings.
And I guess so we can further discussion, I would move to establish a resolution to establish a bank account.
Second.
All right, let's have some discussion regarding that. Why no? You already indicated why, but isn't this the last thing that we'd want to be responsible for, is running some type of bank account?
Well, we have to.
All right. So we can't dodge that and delegate that to someone else. We have to handle our own accounts. I take it that's per county policy and by statute. Yeah, all right. Is there any questions regarding that?
Well, how have we managed to function without one forever?
Petty cash box, yes.
Okay.
So
And
we're
in-
responsible for really accounting for such things, is that correct?
Yes, I think it's a lot more safe. Checks and balances are in place when you got a bank account.
It might be easier to run out of the cash box, but there's an accounting standard, I suspect it's
And this will be audited by
The board will probably receive yearly, at least yearly, a bank statement, so you'll know what's there. So, and
These
then
are
it,
public records.
just how much money do we think on average balance will normally be?
ballots?
What kind of balance? What
Oh,
kind of cash are we
balance.
going to have?
Well, it depends. So the state does say that we shall impose fines, and we're trying to clean that up, but that could become very great, because if we were to fine people now, we'd have several $1,000s.
But when we had petty cash,
Oh, well,
was the
so
normal?
in the past, no one's been fined, and just in the last couple of years, we started collecting fees for copies, which is the county ordinance, and also it was in 2019 when we passed the resolution to have a fee for data for the SVRS. So we probably have 200. Oh, he's got it. I was going to say $200.
so if we start collecting fines for candidates who don't file reports or things like that, this could inflate, but right now, we're talking about several $100s as a typical balance.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Next agenda item, late annual report filings. It seems like that's been on our agenda several times. Who has the report on that?
He's handing that out right now.
So Juan's passing that out.
What are we?
And is it Juan, Germany, or Mike that would have the most information on that?
This has been one heck of a process, that they have gone back
Thank you, Juan.
to make sure that everybody is in order, and they found a lot that was out of order, unfortunately, with these filings, but a lot of people did respond to their phone calls and corrected issues, but we still have current issues, and people have received calls, they have received emails, they have received certified mailings, and we still have a handful of people who are not responding. And there's even one who we cannot get a hold of at all, even the board that he serves on, we've even contacted the city. So we just have not been able, I don't understand it.
So let's throw it out for some discussion here. Obviously, as a board, I sense and will personally report some reluctance to assess a penalty against our prior candidates. And but if I recall the statute, doesn't the statute say shall?
It says shall for certain circumstances. There's other ones that say may impose, but when they are late, that is a shall. And there's some other shalls. But we have, here you have a lot of people that they responded. I mean, this whole list here, Juan, am I right? This whole list is everybody that we had an issue with. And some of them were very minor.
Yeah.
This is your long one over there.
All right. Well,
That one
let's deal
shows
with
that-
the ones that haven't responded. The folks that have, they've
That's-
responded.
Yeah.
They're
This is the ones who are still like pending.
all right. So these are the folks that we're thinking about sending some type of notice to and inviting them to appear before the
Yes.
board and explain why they shouldn't have to comply with the law.
Yes.
Especially
Is that
the-
essentially what we're
yeah.
talking about?
But final disbandments is something, not to put a whole lot of weight on. That is, I think, an understanding, and some of these have been around a long time, and no one has ever told them they needed to close their account. So it's a very minor issue.
It's a minor issue, but we've told them how many times now? Or at least mailed and attempted to call and done whatever?
For some folks, multiple times, especially the folks in red, right here on this one. So
All
those
right.
ones are probably ones that need to be reviewed more. So
So Juan, are you telling me that you feel that the office has done the best it can to put these folks on notice that they have something, some report that they need to file with the office to
Exactly.
comply with the law?
Exactly.
All right. And so would it be your conclusion then that there's not much more the office can do?
The board can issue
Yeah.
subpoenas.
Well, I mean, we could invite them to come and explain why they shouldn't be assessed with a fine, and I take it if we do that, they would understand that maybe they can explain it, maybe they can't. But isn't it sort of a drop-dead date that do it?
Do we know what, I mean, in a sense, we've just used jawboning to try to get this done. And now we're thinking of escalating that a little bit and saying we're going to dip into your pocket if you don't do this the way the law is mandating it.
Right.
But what is, have we checked with, Monroe County, Delaware County, some of these, where maybe they have gone through this same process? And then, so now, I'm not inclined to hit somebody very hard for, particularly for some of the, that I'm going to call a minor office. But at the end of the day, so we say we're going to fine you $25. If that's saying, how much
If
effort
the
are we going to?
the shall is, when it's a late filing, the shall is $50 a day up to $1,000
Yeah.
per report. And it is, I think, because we've not put pressure on them. I think once we start doing that, I think people will fall in line and start paying attention that this is important. The other thing that we'd like to do is start putting these online.
I don't mind listing, the evildoers or wrongdoers or whatever it is. But what I'm trying to find out is I'm assuming we're typical. And so now there's other
I have spoken with
Actually,
the Porter County clerk. It's roughly the same population as Tippecanoe County. What do you do? How do you do this? And she is in the same boat we are. Previous administrations have not, and they have a new board. They have a new structure. They have a structure like us now, so they're just taking up this cause as well. And because kind of my sense is across the state is that we don't have a good system in place to enforce these things, and it just is whenever the staff can get to it, the staff gets to it. Lake County has a dedicated unit to this, and by golly, they do chase people. So that that's a rather large county, and I'm sure it can be pretty lucrative to them. There is a clause in the code that the board can reduce fines for good reasons they find for cause. So I mean that would support your position of a token fine to get people maybe to in line. But some of these folks, I'm not sure how to express it. Their level of cooperation leaves much to be desired.
Is that being courteous and kind?
That's being as circumspect as I can be.
Would the word ignore be more appropriate?
No, there's an active pushback sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's like the parable. I mean, like who's faithful in the small can be trusted with the large. I think that I think it's good to get these things taken care of. And I think, the people that we reached, some people were, I didn't understand it or I didn't get it. Thank you for educating me. We had, it runs the gamut, your responses. Some people just don't think that applies to me. Okay, it does. And so, but we're way past the education part with some of these folks. And there's outright hostility from a couple of folks that don't want to comply. And they need help understanding that it's not just Juan and Mike that want them to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to add, so I don't think staff have really even known how to do a candidate report. So when someone turns it in, now this is what we do. They have been trained on how to look at a report when it's turned in. Shouldn't even be accepted until we know, there's a signature there. I mean, literally, stuff has been accepted without signatures. So now that if they're trained, it is an easier job when it's done right then and there. And you don't have to go back like what we did now, because this has been a whole training thing for all the people that they've gone back in the past and looked at and then given them a call. But going forward, it should be literally, when it's handed in, staff should be looking at it And you can also tell, has it been added up correctly fairly quickly. It just takes minutes to look at it. So if we are kind of watching that when it comes in, going forward, it will be a lot easier process.
What is the suggestion from the board as to what we do now? Under the statute, we can't ignore it. We shouldn't ignore it because it's required by law, and so we shouldn't ignore it. We're held to a higher standard than that. So what do we do now? I mean, I have ideas, but I'd like to, I'd like to see what's suggested. Mike, you mentioned maybe that's the solution. Didn't you say something about they can establish good cause why the fine might be reduced?
I think composing letters and going out under the board signature rather than staff's.
I think, how many letters have you sent already?
Like, for instance, one candidate, I know we've sent 3 certified,
Yeah.
and 3 regular, and multiple phone calls, and reached out through the city council that he serves on.
Don't we have staff that supposedly takes care of these things, that the board wouldn't necessarily be involved in this?
I don't think they feel we have the teeth, because we're not the people that actually make the fines or do the enforcement. We're just the reminder people. And so I don't think they take this serious. My perspective on some of these candidates, some of these folks, they're not taking it seriously.
Maybe.
Because nothing's ever happened in the past, and they don't think anything's going to happen in the future.
There's one I even question if they live here. I mean, there
I
has
think we're
been
talking about the same
absolutely
person.
no contact,
Yeah.
and we have done everything. I'm not even sure if they're around.
And that's a different problem. Then they don't have notice, all right? But
Well,
if these folks have notice, and particularly the folks that have
They
called
go
the
to board
office.
meetings, right?
yes.
They've been at
Yeah,
board meetings?
I mean, it's public record. Councilman DeBoer in West Lafayette has been sent 3 certified letters, including one to City Hall through Sana Booker. I know that he's been served, and he continues to ignore, and he refuses mail at the address of record, and he won't take phone calls.
I'm thinking that maybe what we want to do is establish a process at this level of the board and at this stage in the process that we indicate these folks need to appear and explain why they shouldn't be assessed a fine or a penalty, and give them an opportunity to either comply or to pay up, however they want to handle it.
I feel like we've done that in multiple letters. I mean,
Well, then,
you've read the
to
drafts.
have them appear before this board.
Okay, yes, we'll tell them they have
Not
to appear.
show up in the office and
But
do
they
this and
have
do
been
that.
told that at our meetings that this will be brought up, and we've brought it up in the last 2 meetings, if not
Last 2
3.
meetings, no less than. And so it just has to be done, and as an agenda item, needs to go off the agenda.
Well, what I'm seeing here, I mean, that, you know, we've tried the jawboning, and we've maybe in a sense even tried ignoring it. But we can't do this any longer. So, and we have to have a minimum fine of $50
Per day.
Yeah, and things like that. But that's why I was saying if some county has sort of gone through what we have done and then taken the next step, and if that has been effective or not. So I'm willing to take the next step. I'm just not sure what that should be at this point.
Lake County routinely summons people that,
To be frank about it, Lake County is a world of its own.
I know, I agree with you, Kent, but that's the only example. But I'm on good terms, believe it or not, I'm on good terms with the election administrators up there. They're very competent. But, some of the folks that I talk to are just now getting this focus too. And I think that the spotlight is come on donations and candidate filings and things like that over the last several years because of stuff in the national press, things like this. So it has become important, and it's become an issue. And it's always something that should have been going on. I agree. And after this mess gets cleaned up, your list won't be like this.
Yeah.
And I think that, once we establish that we are paying attention and that this is expected, then I think people will comply. It's kind of like panopticism, like a Jeremy Bentham theory, where, people know that they're going to be held accountable, and they will police themselves, kind of, I think. But we're at a standstill as far as what we can do in the office. There's, the best thing I think now is to say, assign a date that they need to give their explanation before the board.
Or impose the fine.
Or failing to appear, a full fine gets imposed.
When's our next meeting? I mean, we
We
don't
don't
have it
have
set.
one set, yes.
But we don't have one set. And so, maybe, and this is just discussion, maybe what we do is regarding this item, just consider that we do establish what I'll call a drop dead date. Either do it, or you will be on the agenda for the next meeting that we do have, and you'll be able to show cause why you shouldn't be assessed a fine of $50 a day, which according to my calculator tells me that's $18,000. I mean, this is a significant.
Well,
And the state posts
Potential risk.
state posts their defectives and missings online and issues a press release.
All right. Well, I suspect that.
Yeah, well, I think all of that's good, but I think we probably ought to have the meeting, the potential date in the notice, and
That'd be helpful, I think.
Yeah.
yeah, so that it's not when we have the next meeting, it's December 15th or whatever.
No, I think a specific date would be, and maybe
then we could,
we might look at it differently if they've complied by that date. I don't want to foreclose that possibility. But when's the general area when we will have our next meeting?
well, let's set
I would
one
think
for
you
November.
might have one in December.
You want to go December or November, late November?
You have Thanksgiving and stuff to
Yep,
avoid.
you're right.
We do have that conference in the 13th and 15th.
Yep, 13th through the 15th.
So it might be good that really shortly after that, so we could report back anything we learned at conference too.
Is this something that the State Board of Accounts audits the clerk on? Are you subject to audit exception by the State Board of Accounts
Oh, no.
for us not enforcing that law?
No one looks at those fees. I've never heard anything.
Never heard anything like that. No one's.
But
no one
the
was-
error here is that people have fallen out of compliance because of it, because we've been lenient and we want them to be compliant, because like I said, we would like to post their candidate filings right online in the future sometime, which I know the public would love to have. And if we get them to fill it out right, there's less embarrassment on their part when it's online and then there's errors and everyone can see it. That's what we're trying to stop.
Yeah.
We're trying to get these people to learn how to fill it out right, but staff needs to know how to fill it out right in order to help. And I think this will go down quite a bit. But again, final disbandments is very, very minor. Defective, by the way, defective ones, that is a may. We may fine, and I think you get to say a fine if there even is one.
All right, we're still looking at, to figure out a meeting so we can
Well,
address that issue.
I'm looking at the week of the 20th. Well, see, this is right before Christmas. Unless we do it before the
What does that do for the conference, I guess?
conference.
You know, I would think we'd want to do it before the conference, just because you don't want to roll into that last week.
Or we can do it after we
Before
get
the
back on the
holidays.
16th of Thursday. December 16th would be the day after the conference. Or Friday, the 17th.
That wouldn't be too bad. Okay, so let's clarify and firm up what we think we're going to be doing here. Now, how are we going to give notice? Are we going to rely on just putting it online, rely on our media partners? We're going to give one final drop dead and indicate that if, well,
I think for good form, we said one last certified.
Yes.
And if we can put in there that, you don't have to say, that the law mandates there's a $50 a day fine, and this will now be enforced. And, I mean, let them know their pocketbooks are at risk.
well, but that's been in there, hasn't it?
We've never set an amount. We've warned them of the possible, we call it civil penalties by statute.
Then maybe we need to be more specific. Does the board have, does anyone on the board want to undertake a review of that letter before it goes out? Send it to me before it goes out, and
Yep.
I'll give a yay or nay or suggestions, and then,
All right.
then it'll go out. And if this, is there any objections that it goes out over my signature?
I think that'll be effective.
Any further discussion regarding that? Unfinished, new business?
New business. You guys have the option of going to the conference if you like. That is when they give out our new books, and so I will want to know, you probably want new
I will
books,
want a new book.
everybody?
There were significant revisions
Yep.
at the legislative session.
All right. The mock election, just a report over that went really, really well, and we had some great comments back, and everybody voted preferably for the system, and Microvote really was very appreciative of us doing. I don't think they'd seen anybody do as great of a job, so thank you, staff, for everything that you did at that mock election, because they were impressed.
Well, who won?
Woody did beat Yosemite Sam.
Well, thank you.
It was amusing. We should have brought those down, but it was amusing to see that people really actually gave a great deal of thought to.
Microvote said that people were like, oh my gosh, why am I thinking so hard on this? But the biggest problem we had, and I'm guilty of it, is I went and hit that touch screen. It's not a touch screen, it's a button.
I did it more than once. More than once.
So we, hard to.
Very engaged group. Steve Shamo, our rep from Micro, said that he'd never been to a demonstration where the voters were as engaged as the ones here in Tippecanoe County.
Yeah.
Well, people are interested.
But that brings then to the last most important thing is our e-poll books. And we did get an email from this state stating that they are working on contracts. I hoped that we would have had it before today. We don't, but a contract that would allow us to receive 86 or 80 e-poll books through a grant. And we need those e-poll books in order to use the microvote system next spring. And we also know they won't be available until January. So I have
But
nothing.
no problems then. We'll be up and running with new equipment?
Yes.
All right, I sense that there is some concern regarding that, but we still.
We'll be fine.
We'll be fine.
Always are.
And the poll workers that came to our mock election loved the system. They're just like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. So that's a huge plus. So very excited.
Well, we hope to do a few more demos in the intervening time. So.
All right. Any other remarks, questions? Move to adjourn?
You want to let the public?
It's not on the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, every time the public now speaks, they get up and yell at the board, so let's not have that.
Let's go ahead and include it on the agenda this time. Do we have any comments from the public?
Yep.
Lisa Bellum, 1016 Peckham Court, West Lafayette, Indiana. I just have a quick request, and that is around and you know, you talked a lot about all the work that you guys are doing. You are doing a lot of work right around the campaign finance forms. If there is a way we can start putting them online so people can easily access them, I think that would be great. It would also reduce some of the work when I go and ask. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Lisa. Anyone else? I didn't mean to discourage that, but all right.
Sure you did.
Actually, I did, but all right, all right. I mean, let's face it, some of you folks have been and have seen what our meetings have degenerated to, and a lot of this stuff, I mean, it's above our pay grade. But having said that, I do not wish to.
Joan Bonnet and Fairfield Township.
Thank you, Joan.
And just had a question regarding the fines to be imposed, and how will those be used? Will they be used to offset the Board of Elections budget, the voting equipment? How would you propose those fines to be used?
You want me to speculate?
That,
General fund, it goes to back to the county, so we don't get to use it or have our next meeting at some other venue, but all right. So it's not our money. It's the public's money. Don't get started. Anyone else? All right. Move to adjourn?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.